Dungeon Master 7's take on Session 0 from Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frostmaiden. I went to Reddit and I looked for the best possible breed of player that I could possibly scoop up. I was looking to get people that were not only going to be of the ilk that I enjoy playing with, which I feel is very important, but also those who are going to be good with the themes that I was looking at influencing. Cold, dark, bleak, murderous, cannibalistic, depressing, during apocalyptic. When I went to Reddit, I posted the where, when, how, why, and all the rest of the campaign. Scooped up a bunch of great responders and actually funneled the top responders that I got along with best over into Discord and then started actual audio chat. That really helped me figure out who was who and who I was going to play well with. A lot of people out there will just ask for, the sun and the moon and the stars and everything else you could possibly give them. So I found it very important to put things on the table like, any kind of prohibitions. If you're gonna say no artificers, which I did, then do that. And if you're going to say no Aarakocra, then say that up front so that people aren't out there building characters that they're not going to be able to use. After getting together about twice as many players as I really thought I would need on Discord, and then interviewing them and whittling them down to the 3 that I wanted to pick up. One I already had as a person that plays in another one of my campaigns. Getting those 3 together, getting their backstories, and getting interviews with them really allowed me to get a sense of who they were, what they wanted to do, and how compatible they were going to be with both my DMing style, my preferred D&D style as a player, or just a person that enjoys the hobby, as well as just our personal relation, how we got along between each other. The main reason I found it so important to go to Reddit as to pull together a higher breed of player was the last time I had assembled a group for Sun the Citadel. It fell apart rather quickly, and there didn't seem to be much adherence to the principles of the game that I was wanting to play. I will only focus on 2 of the players heavily, as unfortunately about a month in, 2 players both had to leave within a week of each other, and so currently there's only 2 of my original members, and we've picked up 2 others to replace and still have a full party of 4 at this moment anyway. But we'll focus first and foremost on the 2 that are still with us. Character creation in Icewind Dale goes a little against the standard Session 0 creating everybody's characters together. It's certainly possible, though I found, because of the secrets that are specifically handed out to each player, and these are secrets from the other players, that this helps to foster the creation process of character creation. And so I opted to go individual style with each character and start with the basic principle of their idea for character concepts, and then tried to integrate in what I thought was an applicable secret, as opposed to just handing them out randomly as is suggested by the book. One character I will concentrate on that no longer plays with us is Perrin, the character of Perrin the Halfling Wizard, whose player is responsible for creating the audio journal that I have created a playlist for as well, and so you can hear things from his perspective for the first 3 sessions. He did attend the 4th session, but unfortunately his job change situation exited him from the game rather quickly, and he was unable to provide a 4th chapter. Perrin had the midwinter child secret, which is that he was born on the winter solstice, or the holiday of Ariel the Frostmaiden, the demigod who is responsible for socking Icewind Dale in this everlasting winter. The reason I bring Perrin up above and beyond the fact that he was a wonderful player who provided us with this journal, or at least the first 3 chapters of the journal, is the fact that his character development I am keeping in the game. I'm keeping his character alive and well in the game and doing things, and hopefully the party will get the chance to run back into him, and I guess that is my way of honoring the efforts that he put into our game. So if you're out there listening, thank you very much, Mr. Pirip. As for another player of mine who plays the character Charles Whitestone, which is an alias, and we'll go into that later. He plays a half-elf druid who has taken the Alagundar Scion secret, meaning he is the last scion of the Alagundar family, who is the true heir and noble family of Neverwinter. His story is that he has been sent off by his grandparents on the paternal side in hiding, as Dagult Neverember is looking for any kind of connection to a legitimate heir. They have sent him away into the furthest reaches of the Sword Coast, up into Icewind Dale, even during the Rime, dropping him off via airship and under the guise of being a replacement beekeeper in Goodmead. A little bit of foreshadowing for the circle that he's going to take at the appropriate level for his druidic circle. And lastly, we'll go into Marvelor's secret. Marvelor, the half-elf bard, I believe Wood Elf is his sub-racial lineage. He has taken the secret of Reged Air, which is kind of a double down on secrets. I really like this one because it helps to get at least this player and hopefully their strong motivations into more of what's going on around 10 towns in an Icewind Dale. The Alagundar Scion is fun for the player, but unfortunately doesn't give the DM a lot to do, a lot of motivations from that character driven through the secret into the missions that are presented. Obviously, you can create stuff and make it your own, but it's a little bit more work, and Icewind Dale is already a pretty work-heavy module. With this secret of Marvelor's, what it means is he is the heir to the tiger tribe of Reged men who live out on the glacier itself of the Dale, not coming into 10 towns, but rather being nomadic. The tiger tribe is known for being evil, for attacking the other weaker tribes, and even 10 towns itself sometimes. The queen of the tiger tribe, Bjornhild, is ruthless and a devotee of Auriel, the Frostmaiden. She believes herself immortal, and so therefore does not feel she needs an heir. She, however, has the same carnal desires as we all do, and ended up pregnant and giving birth to a child. This child was later named Marvelor. She discarded this child into an icy river as a sacrifice to Auriel, and kind of a doubling down of her belief of her own immortality. However, as this baby Reged half-elf, drifted along this icy river, freezing, certainly going to freeze to death in no time flat, the hero, the unspoken hero, the unsung hero, some might even say, of Icewind Dale, Oyami Nartok, the Goliath werebear, moved in, as she is wont to do, and saved this destitute child, depositing him off in one of the 10 towns, Targos. This, of course, saved his life, and he was just old enough to remember or recall the basics of it. And so the real driving, motivating factor, which is so interesting as a DM for this character to be hyper involved with the setting and the hooks, is that he is looking for not only Bjornhild, the Tiger Queen, to pay back vengeance, but also Oyami Nartok, the Goliath werebear and guardian of the Dale, to pay back his thanks. Lastly, but not leastly, we'll go into one of the characters like Perrin, who is no longer with us, unfortunately. The character's name is Zix, the chaotic tiefling warlock, who boasted much and did little. Zix took the secret old flame, which basically means that the player got to pick a old lover, an estranged lover within 10 towns, who had still a positive relationship with them, even if not still romantic. And this would act actually as a boon to the player and more than likely the party, of course. However, this did not get much chance to flush out, as Zix ended up leaving shortly after the 4th session and before the 5th. As recommended by the book, there are a starting town for each quest, as well as 2 additional starting quests, which are agnostic as to which town they need to belong to. The 2 quests, if you've done your research at all, are the 2 starting quests that can float around. Couldn't be more different than each other. One is to find some magical creatures that really, in my opinion, don't even belong in the Icewind Dale setting, and essentially have a pretend make-believe fun time with them, gaining a boon all throughout. Now, I am playing a darker, more grim version of Icewind Dale, and so this didn't jive at all. So immediately I went to the other townless starting quest, which is labeled Cold-Hearted Killer, which essentially the party learns everything there is to possibly learn, excluding any chance for a murder mystery, and is told essentially who to go after and where to go. And they're to go and stop a serial killer who is committing murders in the 10 towns. Now, there's a loose association by the quest giver, Hlen Trollbane, an old bearded dwarven lush who has a dark and jaded past, which basically drives her not only to drink to excess, but also to try and come out of retirement as a sort of bounty hunter, or at least enlist the help of those who can be successful doing so to track down this killer. The Cold-Hearted Killer quest is notoriously hard and brutal for first-level parties, as described by everybody else ever, and so I wanted to give a little chance for the party to get in a little bit of a mission beforehand. And I personally thought one of the more interesting missions was the lake monster, where there was an awakened plesiosaurus in Mayor Dualden, the lake that borders Targos, Bremen, Tourmaline, and Lonelywood. That's right, I did all that by memory as I was passing a semi with its brake clutch on. So this brings us to which starting town, as I didn't feel that there needed to be a starting quest that was railroaded in via the starting town. I wanted rather to give the suggestions of the Cold-Hearted Killer quest and allow them to pick up what they wanted along the way, and have the Cold-Hearted Killer quest be the overriding structure to Chapter 1. The Cold-Hearted Killer quest, being hard as it is for low-level party members, I had the idea of being the mini-boss, allowing them to graduate from Chapter 1 into Chapter 2. But, as we all know, DM plans only last until first contact, and we're going in a completely different direction, which I will get into in subsequent video/recordings. For this particular starting, I wanted to give them the option to do the Lake Monster quest, as I personally found it interesting, and also tying into some of the other quests that were going on, so that there was at least the option of following those up to continue on during Chapter 1. With the players mostly being from 10 towns themselves, and in our discussion of their character and their concept, where they wanted to be from as far as the specific 10 towns, Goodmead was the obvious choice for the beekeeper half-elf Charles, aka Onar, and so we had to get him out of Goodmead as I wanted to start the quest at a larger town, giving them more options for things like inns, supplies, contacts, hooks, just a larger population in general. And the three largest towns are Targos, Bryn Shander, and East Haven. Also the three towns that offer human sacrifice on the new moon to Ariel. The other towns, all offer different forms of sacrifice, some being food and some being heat. So with Charles needing to be dislocated already, he would be en route to gather something relevant to his character. Perrin's character described himself as a sort of odd jobs traveler. Having the midwinter child secret, he was resistant to cold and felt that this would lend himself towards being a traveler, someone who would rescue those who kind of got stuck in between towns during the hard trek. Also performing funeral rites, as over time many of those he would try to rescue between the towns wouldn't quite make it, and so he would be first on spot to do such. And a side note, there was a wonderful performance in the original Hebrew funeral rite written off by this character at the funeral that opened our Session 0, which I'll get into later. So with Perrin traveling around already and needing to dislocate Charles, it was easy for me to essentially plop in the bard character of Marvelor, as he did not have a real preference as to which town he came from and whether it be large or small. Large obviously being the better for a bard or performer. This left Zix, who had described his character as recently being excommunicated from a tiefling cult in a neighboring city, which has more relevance later. So what I ended up doing was creating a new character, a new NPC for the victim of the murder in Targos. This person was the connection for Charles as he was looking for pollen for his bees after doing the most recent sacrifice of warmth to Ariel in Goodmead. Some of the bees were killed by the impending frost. They could not resist it. Perrin was en route to meet up with those responsible for the funeral service of this recent murder victim and now also connection for pollen for the bees of Charles. And with Marvelor being a bard and not terribly connected to any particular city, I felt if I made this contact of theirs a bard as well, that upon his murder there could be a job opening that he maybe could be called in for. This leaves Zix. He is chaotic, and he was the least frequent to communicate with me about his backstory or integration into the campaign, and so Zix was just there. Now, he did describe himself as having known Perrin earlier, and so once I had all of them coming to meet up with Vark Maxel Rannick, the pollen holder, former bard, recent murder victim, and, just a guy that maybe Zix would want to talk to. His station as a bard was at the Three Flags Sailing Tavern, as it is described in the book. My players quickly renamed it to the Six Flags Sailing Tavern, and so henceforth it will be known as such. Once I had everybody at the Six Flags Sailing Tavern and Inn, actually it's not an inn, it's just a tavern, though they have a few basement rooms which the real 3 sheets to the wind customers can sleep it off in, a pile of clean and often changed out hay, to flush out the flavor that I added to this Three Flag Sailing. They had 2 Goliath barbarians, Larry and Barry. Once in the Three Flag Sailing Tavern, Six Flag Sailing Tavern, 18 Flag Sailing Tavern, The party members all having essentially a nexus of hooks, if you will, or at least threads for them to be interested in. It was easy enough to get them all to start having conversation. Also because their contact, known as Ma, was not there quite yet, and so all the information was really funneled to the barkeep Stacy. And so this allowed my players to get to know each other just a little bit and figure out that this person who had been killed was also a reason for Marvelor to get his job and a reason for Charles not to get his pollen. Zix, being the chaotic Zix, and the player doing as well as he did, fell in with everybody, and in fact was able to go out there and scoop up some hooks, as I had Hlyn Trollbane in there trying to give out her hooks relating to chasing down this killer and who she thought it was and why. Once all there, they intermingled with each other, and then while waiting for Ma to actually show up, they started to disperse and talk to others. In the way things flush out, often the dwarves, the fisher dwarves that Zix talked to, challenged him to catch 3 of the knucklehead trout, which ended up being their first mission, if you will, in the session 1. Perrin, our halfling wizard, went and talked to a pair of female elves who was being harangued by a human Chad, and through a light ploy or ruse, he was able to liberate them from this human fighter who was so impressed by himself. Those elves also became relevant later on, as I think a lot of DMs are wont to run with any thread that the characters give them, any interest that they show, and it's like, okay, what's that? You like this puppy dog? Well, that puppy dog is now a huge part of my campaign. After learning about the serial killer that was on the loose, after learning about the possibility of getting a rare dwarven draft as recompense, and catching fish so that Grim could take the day off, I had the first 2 easy hooks planted for the party. And as I had described them, as a DM, I offer 2 hooks, and I know that very often the party will create their own and 3rd hook, and so I always want to leave that option open so they don't feel railroaded by just this or that, a fork in the road. Rather, there's always the option to do just something completely zany and different, as is the D&D way. Having the 2 hooks and Marvelor gaining the job, Charles not gaining the pollen, and Zix being along for the ride, in fact boasting to the dwarves that he would be the one to catch these 3 knucklehead trout and earn the rare dwarven draft, and then quickly thereafter asking Perrin, the halfling wizard of all people, how to fish. But Perrin is agreeable and decided that he would go with him on this fishing adventure. Marvelor gained the job that Vark Maxelranic once had, and as they found out, this Vark Maxelranic is the cousin to the speaker of Targos, Nerith Maxel Danner. I do a little funny play with the naming convention. I do a little funny play with the naming convention, as you might have noticed, the common thread being the middle name. Perrin was responsible for providing the funeral rites at this for this Vark Maxelranic, and so once Maud did show up and give the details, give the job to Marvelor, and explain some things asked of her, she told that the funeral procession was waiting on him to perform the religious rites. At this point, my good old party came together after only knowing each other for a few hours, and decided to all head off together onto the dark waters, the dark frozen waters of Targos. There, Vark Maxelranic was laying onto a boat. You can think of a Viking-styled funeral for this part, as there was less than half a dozen people gathered around to pay the respects at the loss of the speaker's cousin. The speaker was there, as was his bodyguard and what can be assumed to be the mother. The speaker raised the bounty in front of the party. Targos offered now 200 gold for the head of this killer, and that was in concert with East Haven and Bryn Shander also offering 200 of their own each, bringing the total bounty up to 600 gold pieces. Quite the booty and loot for a low-level party. This definitely got their got dollar signs in their eyes. But first thing was first, the performing of the funeral. At this, my chaotic Zix tiefling warlock boasted again that he would be the one to catch this serial killer right in front of the survived, including speaker Nerith. My awesome player Pirip performed, as I have said earlier, a in-language Hebrew funeral prayer, as well as sent off the body in the boat in immolation to rise to the assumable human gods. After this wonderfully dark end to our session 0, where the players had the chance to get to know each other and kind of decide on hooks, they kind of sat out in the dark and just kind of let a contemplative moment sweep through as a zeitgeist amongst the funeral goers. After this, they all retreated back to their own places of sleeping, which was primarily the Luskan Arms Inn for the 3 who did not live in Targos, and to the home for Marvelor, who did. And this was the end of my session 0, and some of the things I think were wonderful about it were the theme and the flavor of it, starting off with a funeral, starting off with it in the dark and the cold. Not that there's much of a choice in Icewind Dale, but to start off really thrusting them out into the cold and the dark, the funeral, the murder, and then, of course, tying them all together with just that one character seemed to work fairly well, as opposed to going with the, yeah, you're in here, and then there's just some weird guy who's trying to hire some sword cells, and you guys all just happen to do it. And then, of course, this was necessary for them to be individuals as opposed to all being linked together, like starting off as the Fellowship themselves. So in kind of looking back upon the whole thing, it all went pretty well, and I was very excited to have such a great group of players, and I felt that the effort and hours of interviewing and reading and rereading and curtailing what I was planning on doing to the players that I was scooping up from Reddit and Discord, it all really paid off, and I highly recommend going through that kind of process if you're as nitpicky and high expectationed as I am as a dungeon master. And so, yeah, head on out there to wherever you can scoop up some good players. If you're looking online, Reddit, looking for page is a great resource, much better than something like Facebook, I have found. But then again, being damn near 40 years old, I can be considered kind of a Luddite in contrast with some of my younger friends, and as far as how much I know about internet resources and whatnot. So, yeah, in summation, go and pick up some good people from Reddit and Discord or whatever if you don't already have good people. If you're running Frostmaiden, I suggest starting off with those secrets and letting that really influence how your players build their characters. Integrating them all together is obviously going to be important, and that will be, that'll be the nuance that only you can handle as a dungeon master, because who knows what they're going to be and what they're going to want to do as players. And as far as starting off, yeah, I would 100% recommend trying to, at the early stages, weave these missions, these quests together. The lake monster one I picked because it ties in nicely to the Ravison kind of quest that is at the end of the Lonely Moose quest up in Lonelywood. And so the awakened animals is kind of a theme that's really taken off in my campaign, as we'll go into when I cover session 1